You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your healthcare? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their healthcare. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your healthcare, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your healthcare while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
Sometimes we need to slow down and remember the simple pleasures in life. Good coffee, good books, and good company. Come on in. Take a seat. The coffee's just been brewed. Let's see who we have in the coffee shop today. It's wonderful to be back in the coffee shop. It's a beautiful day. Now I'm looking for the book on the table. There's a book. There it is. Nice thick book, too. And the title on the book is Maldene. And the author's name is Mark Anthony Tierno. How you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing wonderful.
Fantabulous. All right, you've got to tell me about this wonderfully large book sitting on the table.
Well, the best way of describing it is what I heard off a blogger recently when she compared it to Lord of the Rings meets the Odyssey by Homer.
Okay.
You have your big epic tale. You have what I call the ultimate bad guy, Myro, and it all revolves around seeing what his plans are, how to stop him, what's going on in the world.
Okay, so that sounds fascinating. Now, how long did it take you to write your first book?
Are you talking the actual writing or all the lead up to it? Because the writing for the first book took me about 9 months. That was after about 15 years of just accumulating notes and stuff here and there and getting the plot down. 9 months during which I was basically teaching myself the whole process and how to go about writing and stuff. And that's a 330,000 word book. Nowadays, that would take me about 3 months.
Wow, you definitely have picked up some speed.
Just a little.
Now, are you self or traditionally published?
Right now, definitely self-published. I have it out on ebook format, and it's all me doing everything, just like a lot of people out there.
Hey, self-publishers are fantastic, and they offer us books we wouldn't otherwise get to read. Now, you mentioned that you definitely use editing services, and I think that's fantastic that you get others to look at your work, because I think the difference between a good book and a great book is all in the editing. So, how do you go about getting your editing?
Well, there's several ways. First, it definitely helps to be a person that has almost zero self-confidence, because you turn that into a strength and realize it's not quite good enough. I'll read it over, one more time, and then after about the sixth edit, you start passing it around to a few friends who are the type of friends that find gleeful joy in finding, hey, you missed a comma here. And getting some feedback from that way. And then there was one particular guy I bumped into back when MySpace was a thing. He was actually, he's actually still around, but he was a copy editor / author and worked in the business for about 40 years. And he got some interest in it, bought a copy, read it, said, hey, you got a few typos. And I made a deal with him going, hey, I can't afford to pay you, But for the price of you get to read this stuff, would you mind looking through this one and a few of my other books and just sort of redlining or noting a few things in there, and I'll see what I can do and take notes on them. And he went, sure. And roundabout, I think it was sometime around book 2, he turned into a fanboy. Which was interesting for me because he's like the ultimate test. He's from Maine. I've never met him before, probably never will. He doesn't know anything about the background of it, and he was passing me back some editing notes and also some fanboy comments, which was really definitely heartening. And then even after that, a couple years later, I went through it just one more time, because when you have that lack of confidence, you gotta keep going at it and keep going over it.
Okay, so you definitely reached out and fell into what sounds like an outstanding editor.
Yes.
And like I said, it's definitely the difference between a good book and a great book. Now, has there ever been a scene in any of your 13 books in the Maldene series, which is an amazing length for a series, that you had to take out to keep the book moving, but you really didn't want to, but there was no other option?
Not take out, but there was one I had to alter. Around book 10, which was the hardest one for me to write because the outline for that was pretty much the title, and that's the Chaos Wars. There was one particular scene that involved a fight of 5 different factions, and this part actually takes place out in space. And after I wrote it up, I was just outside biking around, walking to the Arboretum and thinking, all those factions, one ship looks like another. They're all bland. I got to do something about this to make it different other than just people shooting at each other. And I did some thinking, went back, redid the whole scene, gave a wide variety of different types of ships. I had one ship was basically an asteroid with a gun. I had another ship that was made of plasma. I had one that was an actual sailing ship that used magic just to sail around in space. So I gave them each a different personality, and that also helped with the rest of the book because the type of ship determined the type of race and everything else, and after that everything went smoothly. So I wouldn't say take out, but I did have, that's the one scene I had to go back and revamp head to toe.
Wow, that's a fantastic relationship with that editor. It's amazing. Now, what made you decide to write epic fantasy? And yes, I have to use the word epic. With 13 books and them only being ebook in part due to length, that is an epic tale. So what made you decide to do epic fantasy?
Well, I think I probably redefined the word epic. I read a lot as a kid, and I read fantasy and I read science fiction and everything else. And so that's basically something I sort of fell into. The one thing I always wanted to do was I wanted to see the ultimate villain, because I got tired. I grew up when the villain would capture the good guy and spend like 10 minutes explaining his plan to him while his other friends have time to break in, and I'm going to just shoot the guy. So I wanted something with like the ultimate villain, and the rest, like I said, I did a lot of fantasy reading. I played Dungeons and Dragons a lot, and even wrote my own version of the game system. And so the fantasy angle just kind of fell in. But of course, I like science fiction, and so I began blending bits of that in there. So the overall plot of Maldene, it's actually an amalgamation of, it starts off fantasy and then starts getting more into some science fiction elements.
Well, that sounds absolutely intriguing and fantastic. And I know what you mean by those bad guys. They always seem to either A, do something stupid that's going to get them caught, or B, just do something to give you just enough time for the good guys to ride to the rescue.
Yeah, I don't, be it the good guys or the villains, I don't believe in, if you have to have somebody do something stupid to advance the plot, then the only thing stupid is the writer. So I got smart bad guys, I got smart good guys. I don't rely on somebody doing something stupid to advance the plot. And if you want to get the better of the bad guy, you're going to have to be really crafty about it.
Now, I have seen some books where the character does something stupid, but it's within their character's ideology because they or mental theme because they always do X, and that's how they get caught. It's routine kind of thing.
Yeah, that's permissible. But when they and you can, there's actually what is it? The TV series The 100. The entire first 3 seasons were possible only because they had to do outrageously stupid stuff that no one in their right mind under those circumstances would do, and that's the sort of thing I avoid. And I've seen it happen too often, mainly in the movies, because I think the bulk of Hollywood is just out of talent. But if it's within the personality and consistent, then keep it consistent. But if you have to do something, where you've written yourself into a hole and the only way out is, okay, he's going to have to trip over and fall into it or something, then no.
I agree with you. Too many of the good guys or the bad guys just don't think. Kind of like the scared girl in the horror flicks that always trips and falls over her own 2 feet. Or they always go down into the creepy basement. It's like, come on.
Yeah, try something different, and worse, and stupid things like, hey, the guy's running in slow motion. How are you not outrunning him? Because you're being too scared and tripping and all this other stuff. I want to see something smart and different.
So, do you have a little bit of a MacGyver touch thrown in there somewhere where people are creating and engineering things together to get out of those bad situations?
I do have elements of that. And being fantasy, of course, they do it using magic. So I in my notes I have listed, the types of spells that they have and everything else. So going within, okay, what level of magic do they have at this point, and how can they use that to get out of the situation? It's like saying, okay, the character has a magical equivalent of a screwdriver, a hammer, and 2 nails. What can they do? And that's nice and inventive to get them out of this, and also within the personality of the characters. Like I have one character, Eldar, who's I actually had to invent a word in Maldene that basically means chutzpah to describe him. The whole premise, I have my own language in there, and sometimes I use native words, and it's the whole premise is like Maldine's translated into English, so I couldn't use chutzpah. But anyway, so whenever he does something different, it's more the equivalent of, hey, hold my beer, watch me do this. And so there's a certain amount of MacGyverism as I'm trying to get increasingly creative on what the characters can do given what they have at the time.
Over 13 books, how do you keep track of all your characters?
So something surprisingly simple, and that's a database. When I first got onto LinkedIn and mixing it up with other writers, and I didn't know how anyone else did it, database, I come from a science background, it just seemed obvious. And I'm telling people like this who are keeping track of note cards and stuff, and I said, I just use a database, and it's like I unveiled the Holy Grail or something. It's like no one had thought of it. But I have a database that has everything from eye color to personality. There's like 20 different fields in there. So by the time I fill it out, I have the complete character down, and it's easy to look up, so I don't lose track of anything.
Do you ever roll dice, since you have that D&D background, to decide one of your character's traits, like eye color or hair color or anything like that?
Well, now that you mentioned it, yeah, there are a few. There's one character we start to see of in book 7 that, among other things, she starts to get a family in book 9, and she's somewhat of the demonic crowd. And so, yeah, I had a little chart on my gaming things where I'd look up, where I basically take up the dice and roll up and see, okay, let's see what color hair this one has. Tangerine, okay, looks good. Because that character had so many different offspring and everything else, and I just sort of went wild. And yeah, I did use a few charts and some dice.
I think it's a great way to get unstuck with a character. So what is your main character? I'm assuming the main character's name is Maldene?
No, Maldene is the name of the world. That's the world where everything takes place. It has nothing to do with Earth. So there's no lost colony or no college kids falling through a portal or whatever. It's a world located, say about 2 billion light years away from here. Much bigger than Earth, and it's where most of the plot either takes place at or everything revolves around. Because later on in this series, we go to other worlds, but it all still comes back to what's happening on Maldene. The main good guy characters, there's actually a few. In the first book, we have Sabu's a wizard. Eldar is the aforementioned elf with a whole lot of chutzpah. Sindar is more of a psychic and a wizard, and they have all their friends and everything, each with their own particular specialty. You got Bronto, who's a strong guy, and so on like that. And then there's a menagerie of people that they meet. The one character consistent through all 13 books is, of course, what I hope to have as my ultimate bad guy, and that is a guy named Myro. He's the one wizard that even the gods are afraid of, and the gods aren't saying why. And he's been around for all of what they know of recorded history, and the whole big thing our characters get stuck in the middle of is finding out what he wants, what's going on, how to stop him.
Wow, that does sound like the ultimate bad guy if even the quote-unquote gods are afraid of him, and he's been the bad guy for all of recorded history.
For what I'll say, what they know of as recorded history. We find out in Maldene 2 Mysteries of Old that the world's, shall we say, a tad bit older than anyone thought, and that there are other things. It leads more into what exactly he's after and why he hasn't gotten it at this point.
Now, you mentioned that the series of 13 books is complete. So
Yes.
What are you writing today?
Well, right now I'm actually ghostwriting. So I'm writing a bunch of other people's stuff until I can start getting it basically keeps food on the table until I can get my own stuff selling and get some interest drummed up. But since Maldene, there's actually a couple of other series I've written. There's a couple of my Inspector Flatfoot stories that are out there. I wrote 6 of those. Those are little things I write in between all the big ones. And by little, I mean some of them get up to like 100,000 words. For me, that's small. I have another series, Cyberdawn, which is sort of the inverse of Maldene. It's science fiction with fantasy overtones, and that actually takes place on an alternate Earth. And if you like conspiracies and everything else, this has what I would call biblical level conspiracies. And then somebody else, an online friend, wanted help on something, and she told me the premise, and I thought that's interesting, and I'm probably the one person that can pull it off. Her premise was steampunk with intelligent bees, and it's called Land of the Hive, and that has 8 books, and she's trying to sell that right now. And she was amazed I was able to pull it off without making it look like a kiddie book. I wrote something that full adults can read on that one.
Intelligent bees, that does sound fascinating.
Yeah, like I said, it was an interesting concept, and I said I don't think anyone else can probably do this except me, in all honesty.
So do you enjoy ghostwriting and getting into other people's projects, or is it just a means to an end for you right now?
For the most part, a means to an end, because I'll ghostwrite fiction or nonfiction. Obviously, I like doing the fiction stuff a lot better because I can get into that. But while some of the fiction one I've enjoyed, and some of the nonfiction has been various levels of being informative, my inherent love comes back to the stuff that I write, because that gives me complete freedom to do all the bizarre stuff I want. That's where my enthusiasm comes in. Where I start doing things like I'll average 12 to 13,000 words a day. I'll average doing 125,000 words a month. Heck, when I was doing book 13 of Maldene, I think that one's 570,000 words, and I did it in 4 months, editing included. That's what the enthusiasm does when I'm doing my stuff.
Wow, that's a lot of words to write and edit in a month. So, how do you manage to write and edit all these projects and keep them straight in your head?
Well, first I do keep copious notes, but I'll have the outlines for each project I'm doing. If on ghostwriting, I'll juggle up to about 4 books at the same time. If it's my own stuff, I plow through like one entire series at a time. And in either case, I keep copious notes. And, well, I think ultimately it comes down to I just have a brain that won't quit. And people consider me somewhat intelligent. I have a master's in physics, for instance. So, I just remember things really well.
Now, coming from this scientific background, do you write in Microsoft Word, or do you use something more like LaTeX, or do you write in a program exclusively designed for writing?
I just use Microsoft Word. I actually started my stories back on my old Amiga, and so just any word processor would do. I was writing this stuff before they began coming out with all this specialized writer software, and I'm going, really? I just need a good word processor and a database, and I'm happy.
Now, you've got some interesting cover art. How did you get your cover art, and was it hard to come up with covers for all 13 books?
Well, the covers for Volume 1 and 2 of the first book, after I left a certain now defunct publisher and they had their quote-unquote professional clip art, I'd had the idea for the cover in mind that I wanted from day one. So when I was doing it on my own for my own ebooks and stuff, a friend of mine, one of his daughters, is a professional artist, as is her boyfriend, and went up to them and went, how do you like to do a book cover? Here's the idea I have. And the basic idea I had was you have the scene below with the people approaching the castle for Volume 1, and in Volume 2, all these ruins of where they're going. And overhead, is supposed to be the face of the villain, his eyes out there showing through the clouds. And I told them, I want these eyes to look like they're evil to the point where Emperor Palpatine on Star Wars seems like Little Mary Sunshine in comparison. And in that, I think they did a very good job. And they did the covers for the first 2. They were busy, though, when I got to Maldene 2, so I had to have someone else do the cover, but they kept the eyes. And those eyes are actually pretty great.
Well, that's fantastic. So you do have your covers professionally designed.
Yeah, I'll have the idea, and within limits of what I can get them to understand and project the image in my mind into theirs, I go, here's what I want. Try to do something, because I'm not an artist. I paint with words. I don't paint with paintbrush and colors and stuff. It'd be like a crayon drawing if I did it.
Well, I think covers are very important because they give us not only a little bit of insight into what may be happening in the story, they also can help or hurt sales. If it's a good cover, it can help sales. If it's a bad cover, it can hurt sales. So you come out with 13 books in the Maldene series. Then you went back and wrote 2 prequels.
Yes.
Do you have another epic series up your sleeve?
I do actually have notes I've been recording in a file the last several years that as soon as I get the chance, when things have eased up financially, I have another idea for a series I want to start into that involves a world with 16 moons. And what I started out with the premise on this one is I decided, okay, no humans. So there'll be all sorts of other races, but absolutely no humans. You can have bipedal creatures, but no humans. And I decided water would be dangerous on this planet. It'd cause things to burn, explode, and that sort of deal. And then after that, I just began adding one wild idea to another, and I have the file for and the basic outline for what will probably become the plot. And I don't know. I'm tempted on that one to do 1 book per moon, but I still have to go through my notes and see if I really need as many as 16 moons. But my tentative title for that is the Many Worlds Saga, but that may change.
Well, I will take this moment to say I love repeat guests in the coffee shop. Now, how did you get started in writing? What inspired you to start putting words on paper to tell a story?
Every time I think the answer to that one, I keep remembering something and going further back. Because I remember when I was like 13, we were reading books in 7th grade, and I remember reading stuff and noting in my head that, I like the way that author did this or that, and I'd sort of just record part of it in my head, let it stew there for a while. But then I remember how before that there was a couple little short stories I did, or something else, and I've always had a wild imagination. So the more I think about it, the further back it goes, and whether I realized or not, and at the beginning I didn't realize it, I think I was just born to it.
So it definitely sounds like your parents encouraged you to read as a child. Do you think that played a large role?
They were trying to figure out where I'd end up going, because they went, our son's intelligent. He's college material, which back then was a big thing to say. And it's like, hey, maybe he's going to get a degree. He'll be big on this. Oh, wait a minute, he's doing other. I kept up in the ante. And, of course, they'd support me because they wanted to figure out where this would go. And when finally, years later, because I hadn't told them that I was going to write this thing, I mentioned a couple of friends, and they saw I was starting to write. And my mom's going to my dad, hey, Bill, I think our son's going to be a writer, finally. So, yeah, they were nice and supportive. And it was during shall we say, not the best of circumstances to be creative, because my dad got Parkinson's when I was halfway through high school. So I was here helping my mom, and being able to occupy myself writing sort of really helped. So my mom couldn't go out and do stuff on her, and I'd be here looking after my dad and also cluttering away on the keyboard.
Well, it sounds like a very interesting start to your writing career. What's the biggest lesson you've learned over writing 13 books and working with other people's projects? What's the one lesson you wish you knew at the start of it?
Well, one lesson I'm still trying to figure out is I'm not good at self-promotion. I know that's my weakness. So if you have a chance, find someone who is, if you're creative and a writer. A few things I was able to figure out. One supposedly good author, the worst thing he said that I heard anybody say was write the market. And my advice would be, no, write what you love, what's in your heart, because if you stick with the market, it will change by the time your book's finished. But if you write, what you want to do, what you go, I want to do this story, you're going to be putting 110% into it, and then it's just a matter of you will find your audience. So that would be, the one big piece of advice there. The other one was a great one-liner I thought up when I'm trying to think what the goal of a writer is. And I realized people will say a picture is worth 1,000 words. My answer to that is the goal of a good writer is to make one word worth 1,000 pictures.
Wow, that's a very fascinating twist on a statement. What other nuggets of writing wisdom have you picked up along the years?
Turn the grammar checker off. I mean, when you go through, you have the spell checker, that's fine, but the grammar checker, when you're doing a novel, is utterly useless, because everyone in the world does not talk like they come from Yale. Some have accents, and I've done times when I'm trying to spell what the guy's saying so it sounds like his accent. Or like one character in a Flatfoot story had a lisp. So I'd write out his dialogue, and every time there was an S, I put an SH in there. And then some of my descriptions get almost sort of quasi-poetic in nature, which if you look at it from the strict rules of English and writing and everything, I violate rules left and right. But it's what works for the description of the scene. So just leave that grammar checker turned off, because it's just really going to get in the way of a good story.
Now, when you're finished writing that tale, you've just finished your writing, and you've just finished writing a book, do you go back the next day and start editing, or do you put it in that proverbial drawer for a while and let it sit and get some distance from it?
Both. Because, well, my process is like I'll write, say, a given swath during the day, and then at night I go back as I'm eating dinner, I'll edit what I did. And then when I come to the end of a chapter, then then the next day, as I do what I call a chapter edit, I do the whole chapter, any more typos, any plot inconsistencies, spell check, outline the next chapter. At the end of a section, most of my Maldene books have 3 sections. I'll go back over everything in the section to make sure the plot connects from one chapter to the next and I didn't miss anything. And then at the end of the book, I'll give the whole book the once over one more time. And then since then, of course, I put it down. And after I finished the Maldene series, I began coming back to it, and as I thought more about something, going, let me reread it a couple more times, catch some typos here and there. And at one point, I'm looking at my map and realize I need a few more place names here for some of these oceans. Let's edit those in, and went back and read the whole thing over again and caught some more typos here and there. So I do a lot of editing, and you also have to realize that at one point, it's like, okay, 8 or 9 times is enough, or you're going to grow, crazy on this thing. Let somebody else see it now.
So at that point, you bring in your editor and your friends, and you pass it around to get it beta read and get other eyes on it.
Yeah, and I have one friend who became my default beta reader. He's read the Maldene series like 12 times each. And he admitted that it wasn't until about the 4th or 5th time through that he stopped catching some of the clues I'd put in there, because I put in lots of clues and plot points that lead into other things that people will miss the first time round. And he said it wasn't until about the 4th time that he stopped catching more of them.
Well, hidden Easter eggs and hidden clues are a good thing in writing, especially when you don't realize quite what that means and you think it's a throwaway sentence and don't pay attention until wham. That's the key to the universe, or at least to this plot thread.
I've plotted some things like 4 or 5 books deep.
Wow. Working that far ahead of yourself, does it ever get confusing with your plot threads?
Not for me. I keep track of everything. Like I said, copious notes, and I have everything in the back of my mind all laid out. But there will be things, like I said, that same friend, into book 4, he asked me, it's like, what is this scene doing in here? He found out in book 9.
Now, do you ever find that you've planted that Easter egg and then you forget about it yourself and then you have to go back and work it in?
There was one time when that sort of almost happened, and that I had this one place name mentioned in book 1, and also in book 3, and it was on the first series read through that I was doing, and I'm going, wait a minute, I mentioned this place back in the other thing in book 1, and I read back and went, yeah, it's there, but I found a way of the plot. I just had to insert a couple lines in the first book and then a few lines in the second book to make it good. I found a way within the context of the plot that made sense to make it work. But yeah, that was the one time that it came close.
At least you were able to go back and pick up that little plot thread and bring it forward.
Yeah.
So is your day job writing, or do you have a regular day job?
Writing is all I do. I'm a full-time professional ghostwriter. Frankly, I couldn't suffer through your normal cubicle job or any of what I call wearing a paper hat job or anything like that. I realized writing is what I want to do, and at one point had to start making some money, and realized I'll do a web search. I wonder if people actually pay me to write stuff. And it turns out they do. So that's what I do.
How did you get started in ghostwriting? Because it's such a mysterious profession, much like its name. It's a lot in the shadows, and a lot of people don't want to even admit they use a ghostwriter.
In my case, sheer desperation. I was going through a really bad period of my life. My mom had passed away. My dad had passed away years before that. I was in the middle of probate, and this was an awful, blood-sucking, my sister's insane level of probate. I had a small job with a friend's company that went under. I was running out of unemployment benefits, and the probate was just costing me money, and I'm going, I need something. And after trying other job hunting and reaffirming the fact that I stink at job interviews, I went, hey, I wonder if, there's actually paid writing jobs out there. And that started with a Google search, and I found these freelancer boards, and now I'm with a couple of pro-level ghostwriting companies. I have a range of different authors on them, and finally got up to the point where last year I got off of food stamps, which was a happy day for me. So it's been a long, arduous road, but, I just went grabbing around in the dark and started finding things.
Well, I think it's fantastic that you've made your passion your living, even through difficult and challenging times. It shows your determination.
Well, it's the one thing, I don't like to give up, and after all this time of what I'm aiming for, it would be a waste of a lifetime if I did. So I can't give up. I got to keep trying.
Well, Mark, I am going to pour you a fresh cup of coffee.
Thank you.
And
delicious.
We are going to pay those wonderful radio station bills, and I will see you on the other side.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your healthcare? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their healthcare. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your healthcare, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your healthcare while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Thank you for hanging in there with us while we paid those radio station bills. Now I'm going to pour myself a fresh cup of coffee. And on that note, Mark, I do have to ask, what is your favorite coffee shop treat?
I would have to say passion fruit iced tea.
Oh,
it has a little bit of tropical thing going in there, and I love iced tea.
Sounds delicious, especially on a hot summer day.
Yeah.
Now, do you listen to music when you write, or are you one of those writers you like everything nice and quiet?
Music is how I'm able to type for like 10 hours a day. And it has to be a specific type of music. I'll listen to soundtracks. So think like anything by John Williams as an example, like Star Wars or something like that. So I have the epic music playing. It has to be something that gets my blood going. And nothing with any lyrics, because if it has lyrics, I'll be paying more attention to those words than the ones coming out of my head. So like orchestral, epic soundtracks, sort of stuff, I got to have my music. I've had times when I didn't know what the heck I was going to write, and I sit down and going, this is not going to happen. I turn on the music and it starts flowing.
So, Mark, you mentioned you have a degree in physics. That's a very scientific background. How does the science in the science fiction elements of your book benefit from that background?
Well, it means, one, I don't have to look anything up because I'm my own source material. Two, I know how to keep everything logical and consistency and consistent. So where I'll have where it goes beyond science facts, because I do have science fiction in there, then I know how to extrapolate using, in some cases, my own theories I'll put in there. And I just know how to keep it sort of sciencey and consistent. And I actually do the same for the fantasy end of it, because I'll have my rules of magic. And so just like the science thinking part of me, I'll apply that and say, okay, this is magic, but it still has to be consistent and make sense. So that gives it limitations on what the characters can and can't do.
That makes sense. And it makes sense that your background on science would cause you to create rules and keep them consistent throughout, because that's kind of the benchmark of science. There have to be rules, and for it to be a scientific fact, it has to be consistent and provable.
Yeah, as long as whatever world you create as a writer, it has to be self-consistent. And even if for magic, if you don't have any rules, then you probably don't have any plot, because things will be inconsistent. Like, well, how come he can't do it now because he did it earlier? Or things will get too far to hand on the magic end of it. I treat it like, I pretend like it's another force in the universe, like magnetism or something. And so within those parameters, here's what they can do.
Now, when you write and you have your music going, do you add any other stimulus around you, such as candles or incense or anything like that? Or is it just the music?
Just me and my music. I turn on the music, I sit down in front of the keyboard, and then that'll be like 7:30 in the morning, and next thing I know, it's like about 5:30 or 6. And I actually, when I come out of it, I actually feel refreshed. I've had times on a good session, and when the music finally ends and I quit for the day, when I'm going, wow, that was exhilarating, and there's like sweat pouring down me. I've shorted out 2 keys on the keyboard, and I'm just feeling like I could, jog laps at that point.
What authors have influenced your writing? Because you mentioned that you are quite the reader. What authors and experiences have influenced your writing?
Quite a few. I read a lot of Heinlein, Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, Ray Bradbury. I don't know if you've heard of A.E. Van Vogt. Just anything I could get my hands on. When I was growing up and reading, I sort of subconsciously took notes from every single one of them. So I'd have to treat them all evenly.
So it sounds like you're a morning person and you like to write first thing in the morning.
Well, that's when I'm fully awake. Like I said, when I'm on my schedule, I'll get up at I'll be at the keyboard at 7:30 in the morning, and I'm there until, depending on how the chapter comes out, what I have to write and everything, between 4:30 and 5:30. A couple of times I went all the way to 6, And those would be the time. It was a really good chapter that I wanted to finish, and I wrote like over 15,000 words that day. I couldn't stop. I had to see what was going to happen.
So you don't have these things plotted out. You kind of just make it up as you go along?
A little bit of both. Before I start a book, I have a general outline for the entire book, which will basically be a bunch of notes like I need to have this thing, these plot points happen in succession, and so on. And whether each of those points last for a chapter or 3 chapters or part of a chapter, I don't know till I get there. And then before I start a given chapter, I'll outline more specifically what am I going to put on this chapter. And that'll be another list of notes, like make sure to insert this scene here, have somebody say something like that. And so I'll have all that done before I start a chapter. And then in the process of writing, I'll come up with other ideas like, hey, what if this happened? Or what about inserting a character for this? And as long as it doesn't violate what I have in my overall plot structure, like it falls within it or even maybe adds to it a little, then I'll go, fine, sounds great. And so, there's been, writers that have asked, are you a plotter or a pantser? Do you plot it out or go by the seat of your pants? And my strange but true answer is, well, both. And that combination, that's probably the reason why I've never gotten writer's block, ever.
Well, I have to say you're in good company, as I can name many traditionally published authors that do the exact same thing.
Yay! I'm doing something right.
Hey, there's times when you just have to let the characters run away with the story, or at least so I've been told, because I am not a writer, and no thank you, I do not want to join that club. I'll stick with talking about books and reading them.
I've had a couple of characters that have invented themselves. There's one character, you see him briefly in volume 2 of the first book. His name is Poe Adar, and he's a really crazy wizard. And around about the second full book, I realized he needed somebody to play off of. So I just had him capture and torture this one throwaway character at the time. And that character ended up sticking around, and they ended up becoming a team, sort of like the Joker and Harley Quinn, except they weren't nearly as well adjusted as the Joker and Harley Quinn. And that, like I said, that character just sort of invented itself and stuck around for the duration.
So have you ever found yourself writing something that's just atypical for your characters and you later have to go back and correct it just because you were having a bad day or you were dealing with something that was bothering you?
That's what the database is for, when I have to remind myself and look up, no, this guy doesn't have the personality for that. And by the time I'm a couple books in, I have all the personalities memorized. There was one time when I had a perfect line, but it's something that the character Elder would say. But he wasn't in the scene, and I'm going, this needs to be said. How do I do this? And I'm going, wait a minute, his friends are there. So I had the wizard Sabu say it, and then I had everyone else look at him strangely, and he's going, hey, Elder's not here. Somebody had to say it. So that's how I sort of danced around that, but I did that knowingly.
Well, they always say you can break the rules as long as you know what the rules are.
Right.
And that's a creative way of getting a character into a scene that wasn't there before. Now, what do you do when you want or need some piece of information to come out and the character just isn't available, or if you don't have a character that would normally say or discuss something, or you want to introduce something completely new? How do you go about that?
Well, there's several different ways. One, at any given time in the book, there's several points of view around the world. So I can always go, while these characters are over here, meanwhile, back at the castle, this other discussion is happening with these other people. And that's also another good reason to have so many characters. The first book alone has like about 20 characters. Is that way I have enough to cover what I need. If there's something more I need, then time to invent a new character. So if nothing else, I'll have it like a background behind the scenes thing happen, or maybe somebody will get a message or something, or they'll find something, but I'll think of some way, within the context of the plot where if this needs to come out, then it'll come out. It may happen gradually. It may be something that's hinted at and you hear more and more of over a couple chapters.
Do you find it fun to tease your writers and bring them along for chapters or even whole books over different plot points?
All the freaking time. I'm a great one for planting clues and dragging along with hints and stuff to the writer. I will do that for chapters and entire books. In fact, I will guarantee you by the time you finish reading the first chapter on the first Maldene book, there are several little clues that you've missed. By the time you get past the first page, and 3 books later, you'll go back and realize that, I just gave you a thumbnail plot summary of the first 3 books. But so, yeah, I will drag the reader along by the nose, tease them, tickle them under the chin, whatever it takes. I'll have fun with it.
Have you ever had any fan feedback about that, negative about that? People yelling at you, will you stop teasing me with this and just get on with the story?
Not really. The closest, another friend of mine, his name was Joe. He was reading the manuscript of the first book, and it ends on a cliffhanger on the epilogue. And he's reading through that and comes to it and turns to the next page, and there is no next page. And he's going, "No, Mark wouldn't do this to me. He wouldn't. He did," because it's almost a seemingly out of the blue cliffhanger. So I heard a bit from him on that one, going, along the lines of, "You dirty rat, how dare you do that?" Now, where's the next book?
How long between books do you generally go to get one published?
Well, the 13 Maldene books I wrote basically all in a row with occasional summer breaks. And the entire time, in my spare time, I was trying to find agents, publishers, somebody. I think I went through... between letters, phone calls, and emails, trying to contact about 150 different agents.
Wow, that's a lot of agents. Do you ever get discouraged and think you're never going to find that agent?
I just kept writing. And like I said, at one point, I thought I found a publisher, and they're out of business now, and that's better for everybody. But their idea of PR would be... hey, if you buy 5 copies of your books, we'll actually show this one at a book fair. Really? Or, hey, if you pay us $60, we'll show this to J.K. Rowling. Problem is, no one told J.K. Rowling this, and she sued them for accosting her on the street for shoving a bunch of other people's books in front of her face. So, yeah, that's why I'm an indie now. But, I keep trying.
What do you like about being an indie? Is there anything that particularly you enjoy about it?
Well, it means I can at least get something out there right now. Instead of waiting an unknown amount of time to try and convince or cajole somebody, into, please take me. So at least I have the freedom to get something out there, start getting some notice on that. There are, of course, limitations, but it's better than just doing what I was doing before and trying another agent. And the problem with the agents is, if you really need an agent, they don't want you, because they don't want to do the work. It's like, oh, you're established. Oh, okay, I'll take you on. Well, if I was established, I wouldn't need them.
So you've had a lot of frustration with the traditional publishing world, it sounds like. So would you even go with an agent today if you could get one, or would you keep going indie?
If it was an honest agent, like the type where they get a percentage as opposed to trying to convince me an upfront fee is a good thing, then yeah, if they're working by percentage, I do need the additional help. I'm not too proud to say there are some things that I don't know what I'm doing. But it'd have to be, halfway decent agent that would believe in me, and that would do the more traditional. They'll take a percentage like they're supposed to. Because if an agent says you only have to pay me this part, that's the one thing I did learn. You shouldn't have to pay an agent. They earn money when you do.
I've learned that through talking to lots of writers and authors, things like that, it seems there are some shady characters in the book world.
A lot of them.
Because
I should refer back to the aforementioned 150 attempts. One of them was an author trying to become an agent, and his contract was a bit suspicious. I ran it past a few friends, and it sounds like he retains getting a percentage of anything that comes off of this, including future movie deals, whatever, ad infinitum. So I told him, okay, send it back, and the manuscript looked like it had been tossed around the room a couple times.
So you were dealing with a hard copy manuscript?
Yeah, at the time I was Xeroxing off a few copies, and that was one of the few that said, sure, send something. So, and I didn't have the email capacity to go, hey, here's a, multi-meg file. I had dial-up back at the time. So it's like, go to a Xerox machine here, and out of the 150, he's one of 12 that actually responded.
Ouch. Although they say the only difference between a published writer, an agented / traditionally published writer and one who isn't, is persistence. So I gotta say, keep trying. Now, do you ever write by hand, or do you always sit at the keyboard?
It's always a keyboard. Way back when we're talking early to mid 80s, I hand wrote a few notes for some scenes I had in mind that I didn't want to lose. But yeah, I realized early on with this epic in mind that, handwriting wasn't going to do it. A regular typewriter with a bunch of liquid paper wasn't going to do it. And then this fabled invention came along called a word processor, and my eyes gleamed. I went, that's what I need to get. Okay, time to save up or wait for the price to come down for a home computer. And that finally happened in the early 90s and during some other circumstances. And I went, hey, I actually have time and the means now to start turning all these notes into typed up stuff. So I had a few handwritten notes for like the world and stuff that have been accumulating. I have all sorts of background notes. But when it came time to the actual story itself, I knew I needed, something I could type it in.
Now, do you keep a notebook by your bed in case you wake up with that aha moment?
No, I'll remember it. If I'm that most of the time I'll get an idea when I'm away from the house bicycling or something, and I'll go, oh, I got a great idea for something, and I'll just keep looping it in my mind until I can get home and jot it quickly down on the first scrap of paper I find, and then later on that evening I'll enter it more formally into my notes.
So you say you're never faced with writer's block. Why do you think that is?
Part of it is organization. Like I said, I'd outline every chapter before I write it. I outline the book before I start, so I know where I'm going, point A, B, and C. And the other stuff, the other part of it is for everything else in between. I've always had this great imagination. When someone asked me once, hey, okay, are you primarily left brain or right brain? I tell them both. And the response I got was, well, that doesn't happen. It's like, well, it does with me. I don't know if it does with anybody else. So the right brain part of me will think up, these great ideas and imaginative stuff. And the left brain part of me will break down the logic and go, okay, let's see about making this work and filling in the details. And then I'll just go back and forth that way.
Now, you mentioned that you only listen to music without words, and I apologize for that. Someone sent me a text message. You only listen to music without words. Was that after trying music with words, or was that just knowing your personality and avoiding the words to start with? And what about words in another language that you don't know?
Well, the words in a different language, that is the exception because I can't follow it. And like on the Matrix soundtrack, for instance, they have that one chorus thing on the end credit thing, which they're chanting something in Hindi, and I don't know Hindi, and it sounds great and everything, so that I don't mind. But yeah, really early on, when I had a somewhat more limited playlist around here, I had a few records and I ran out of them, and that was pretty much it. And I Okay.
All right, so Mark, what is your favorite piece of feedback you've ever gotten from fans?
Well, it actually came from someone who started out as he was doing some editing here. I mentioned him earlier. He was from Maine. He's a professional copy editor for like 40 years and a writer. And so he came to this agreement, and he'd mark up some text there on little things he'd find and send it back to me. And some of them there'd be like comments, and he's like in his 60s and probably 70 by now, and you could hear the small child in him coming out. He's going, "Oh, what happens next on this? Oh, don't tell me, I want to see it." And one scene he described that I had in there as the most gruesome scene he's ever seen, and then commenting about, "I like the name for this dwarf, it's the most awesome dwarf name." And so I began getting comments back from him, and I'm going, this is coming from a guy who's like about 10 or 15 years my senior, doesn't know anything about this. He's been a pro in the field for a very long time, and I turned him into a fanboy. I like thinking about back to that every single time, because he came from the ultimate neutral point and just began sounding like a kid on reading my stuff.
Well, that sounds like a fantastic fan to have, and I like to describe myself as the reader every author wants, because once I get hooked on a series, I got to read them all.
Well, I can keep you busy.
And I thank you. Now, last question. What is your social media contact information?
Well, the first is the website. It's www.maldene.com. That's MALD as in David, ENE. Everything else links through there, but you can also find me on Facebook. Just look for Mark Anthony Tierno, author of Maldene fan page. I also have my Amazon authors page. For that one, you can also look for Mark Anthony Tierno, and it'll lead. I think the exact URL is amazon.com/author/Mark Anthony Tierno. Those are the main ones. Like I said, you go to Maldene.com and you'll find everything's interlinked, or the Facebook or the Amazon.
All right. Well, I thank you very much for joining me in the coffee shop. And I'm going to grab those 2 books. Yes, I just now discovered that that's actually 2 paperbacks, not 1, for the first Maldene book. Off the table, pour myself a fresh cup of coffee, and settle down with a great book. Now, don't forget, for all of you authors and readers out there, you can follow me on Twitter at Radio Host Jessie. You can always check out my other authors at Jessie's Coffee Shop. And if you are interested in being a guest in the coffee shop, shoot me an email. It's Jessie, Jessie, at jessiescoffeeshop.com. I will look forward to seeing you next time in the coffee shop.